Shanghai Dragons are making their return to Draft League, and this time they're competing in none other than the Pokemon Premier League. And you know what they say, third time's lucky, right? After an absolutely shocking performance in Season 2, we're back and better than ever after tearing it up over at P4G, making our way all the way to semi-finals, only to be knocked out by what I would describe as an unfortunate series of events. This season of PPL, the rules are a little different, with the most notable change being the point system. We can thank Addison for that one. After the incident that was Deoxyspeed, Zamazenta and Greninja, we decided to do both a point system and a tier system, so that way people can't draft absolutely broken teams that would just cause Britain's second Great Depression. To see for yourself what sort of pricing that we're working with this season, there's a link to the fan doc in the description, as well as links to all of my fellow coaches that will be playing this season. There's 20 in this roster, so make sure to check everybody out. They're all absolute sweethearts and just really fun to be around. Introductions and rules aside, it's time to talk about my team and my position in the draft. Since I'm getting married to the commissioner, it's only fair game that I get first pick in the draft order, right? Joking aside, I did actually manage to secure myself first pick overall, despite Jack's best efforts to re-randomize the order several times. Before the season started, I knew that there was only one Pokemon that I really wanted to use, and unless I got the first pick in the draft, I quite literally would never get to use it. And that Pokemon, you ask? Well, I am Valiant. Despite the admins voting on bans for this season, this Pokemon somehow managed to escape the ban hammer, and Iron Valiant will finally be mine to abuse this draft league. Not only does this Pokemon look based as fuck, Iron Valiant has an absolutely ridiculous stat distribution. Paired with insane coverage and a broken ability in Cork Drive, being able to boost any stat for the cost of a held item is absolutely insane, and do not let anybody tell you otherwise. Looks maxing here will be our first offensive piece on the team, and one of the best to exist to boot. I'm sure you don't need me to tell you, but it can be ran both physically offensive or specially offensive. In Draft League format, Valiant really thrives due to its dangerous offensive typing and fighting fairy, and its unpredictable nature. Whilst 9 times out of 10 I'll be using it to break or as an endgame cleaner, Valiant also gets fantastic utility moves in Thunder Wave, Encore and Taunt, making it a very effective stall breaker or anti-setup Pokemon. The only things Iron Valiant will struggle to deal with are bulky poison types or choice scarfers. Before I reveal my second pick, bear in mind that there are 19 other coaches in this draft, meaning there have been 38 potential Pokemon taken out of the pool before it's even gotten back to me. And whilst I could have had something really fun like Terra Ogerpon, I was huffing pure copium thinking it would ever make it back to me on the wheel. Since we picked up the most expensive mon on the entire board, I wanted to steer clear from spending too many points, at least until the later rounds. I wanted to manage my budget in a way that was efficient enough that I could still draft some powerful Pokemon, but it meant having to structure my team strategically in order to avoid snipes, while staying within the point budget and tier system. With all of this in mind, my next pick was Crocodile. I wanted a good Choice Scarf user that could easily break poison types, since I mentioned before that Iron Valiant struggles to deal with those. This Generation 5 monster has become a staple for so many different playstyles despite the power creep in recent generations. It can be run on hyper offense, bulky offense, stall teams, you name it. Crocodile is a definition of a versatile Pokemon, and with the addition of Scale Shot this generation, and Close Combat and Gunk Shot in the previous generation, Crook is easier than ever to use. The thing I like most about Crocodile being on this team is the fact that it can lure in and cripple flying types with knockoff. Removing heavy duty boots is one of the most valuable things you can do in order to position yourself for an endgame. Having 2 broken abilities in Intimidate and Moxie, this Pokemon could be a threat both offensively and defensively, making it all the more annoying to prepare for. Most importantly, Crocodile will be our first hazard setter on the draft, and it certainly won't be our last. To pair with Crocodile, I picked up another famous staple throughout the generations, Rotom Wash. Despite the nickname, this Pokemon certainly isn't washed, and is consistently used on many teams. On my draft, Washtom's primary role is to be a bulky pivot, with most weeks acting for it as a sponge for damage, and bringing in wall breakers using Volt Switch. Rotom's only real downside is the lack of coverage, but it makes up for that in its good utility and ability to check a lot of top tier threats, like Landorus, Palafin, and Heatran. Not only is Washtom going to be a very reliable defensive piece for us, it's no stranger to offense either. With a very usable 105 base special attack stat, Stab Hydro Pumps can pack a punch. And with the addition of Nasty Plot and Sword and Shield, it can become an endgame cleaner if I want it to. The biggest thing we gain from drafting Rotom is being able to both check and break bulky water types. We also lure in grass types that we can neutralize with Will-O-Wisp or Thunderwave. Also, we get to nickname it Skibidi Toilet, which I think is fucking hilarious. After waiting literally 4 days until my next will pick, I had a lot of time to think about what I wanted next. Since we already have 2 solid wall breakers and a bulky pivot, I decided I wanted some roll compression. Something that could do a little bit of everything, but still do it well. This is where Mesprit comes in. For something so inexpensive, Mesprit can fit so many roles on a team. It can be a setup sweeper thanks to Calm Mind and Mystical Power. It can provide utility thanks to Encore, Knockoff and Taunt. It can act as another pivot thanks to U-Turn. It sets up hazards. You name it, Mesprit's probably got it. I like to think of Mesprit as a budget Mew, and whilst it doesn't learn every move in the game, it still gets some pretty impressive coverage. I'm really looking forward to using Mesprit this season, as I've used it in the past and it fits my playstyle really well. It has some really fun things in its move pool, including Healing Wish and Copycat, both of which I can't wait to utilise. After this pick, I realised I was lacking some speed, and I also hadn't really considered any Tera captains at this point. I figured it was the perfect time to draft Jolteon. After its performance in the P4G, we're welcoming back Jolteon with open arms. With Dragapult being banned this season, Jolteon outspeeds almost everything on the board with the exception of Deoxys Speed and Iron Bundle. And whilst normally Jolteon can't really touch bulky grass types or ground types, being able to terastalize into a water or ice type will make Jolteon an even bigger threat than before. I did debate a few other typings like Fairy or Ghost, but after looking at my division, Water and Ice covered things like Clodsire, Landorus Incarnate and Arboliver, threats that Jolteon otherwise wouldn't be able to touch. Thanks to Volt Absorb, we can also wall things like Thunderous Incarnate and Regieleki, which otherwise would be huge threats to my team. If you followed along my P4G season, you guys will know how much I loved using Jolteon and how it pretty much ended up being one of my MVPs. If you missed it, make sure to check out the playlist on my channel. The only downside of using it well in the previous league is now people won't underestimate it, but that's still not going to stop me or Jolteon from popping off this season. Since we've picked up our first Tera Captain, it only makes sense to pick up another one, right? Bear with me here, since it might seem a little early to choose him. Bastiodon is what I decided to pick up in round 6. I had my eyes on Bastiodon since the beginning of the draft, mainly because it can terastalize into 4 different types, and was easily the best Tera option in the E tier. Word on the grapevine was a lot of other coaches had their eyes on this Pokemon as well, so I secured it early to avoid getting sniped. The Tera types I chose for Bastiodon are Fairy, Fighting, Ghost, and Water. I had a lot of fun calcing with this Pokemon in my community Discord, as for some reason it learns Meteor Beam, Blizzard, and Fire Blast. Don't worry, I won't be using Choice Specs Bastiodon. It's mainly here to be a physical wall, set up Iron Defense body presses, and just be a Stealth Rock user. But who knows, if I end up going 0-8 again, maybe you guys will see the threat that is Power Herb Bastiodon. It's getting later into the draft, and I realise I don't have a Ghost type switch in. With Shadow Ball becoming one of the most spammable moves this gen, I picked up Meloetta. Unfortunately, I won't have the budget to make it a Tera Captain, but that doesn't stop Meloetta from being a threat. Whilst I do have Mesprit on the team, they do entirely different things, and that's even before I mention any Relic Song shenanigans. Because of this unique move, Meloetta has the ability to change forms into a fast, fighting and normal type, becoming a physical breaker should the matchup call for it. With its fantastic bulk, Meloetta is a fantastic setup option for us, as well as a solid Assault Vest user. Whilst I've never used this Pokemon before, I feel like it's going to fit my playstyle really well, and I'm excited to use her for the first time. My last couple of picks are mostly specially orientated, so this round I wanted to secure some physical attackers. Mimikyu was the next Pokemon I picked up, as it gives me a reliable priority user, a setup sweeper, and a fantastic revenge killer all in one. Disguise makes it so I can set up Swords Dancers relatively freely, and can make for some interesting interactions in game. If there's something on the opposite side of the field that I don't want to deal with, Mimikyu can come in holding a red card, take a hit thanks to Disguise, and phase it out whilst also dealing a big hit on something or setting up for free. This Pikachu clone gets a lot of fun things in its arsenal, including Will-O-Wisp and Thunderwave for additional status spreading, and is now our third copycat user on the team. Speaking of status spreading, we don't have a grounded poison type yet, so my next pick was Muck. Being able to suck up toxic spikes upon switching is very valuable for us, since we don't have any hazard removal. Not that my team particularly cares about hazards, but I digress. Muck will function as a blanket check to most fairy types, whilst being able to set up some toxic spikes of our own. Thanks to the Poison Touch and Poison Jab combination, Muck can be incredibly obnoxious to switch into, since you either have to consider getting statused or potentially losing your item thanks to knockoff. As we know, getting rid of boots is going to be really helpful to wear things down for Iron Valiant in the late game. Muck also gives us another priority user, and whilst it's not the most powerful, it can still be useful to have. Between things like Taunt, Memento and Curse, Muck is another Pokemon that is versatile and can provide a lot of utility for our team. We're fast approaching the end of our draft, and with 19 remaining points, I decided to split it between two Pokemon. First up, our final Terra Captain, Makago. This thing suffers from its usually dogshit typing, but thanks to Terra, I'm hoping that Makago can put in some work for us this season. Since it can terastalize into 4 types, I decided to go with Fairy, Water, Grass, and Steel. Outside of just being a meme pick, this thing provides us with another hazard setter, anti-setup thanks to Clear Smog, and can even become a setup sweeper itself, thanks to the combination of Weak Armor and Shell Smash. And whilst I don't expect Makago to come to many games this season, it can certainly help set up our copycat users for success. If you know, you know. Now the moment that you've all been waiting for, my final pick. If you've been paying attention, I haven't gotten myself a dragon type yet, and in round 11, Dragonite was still on the board, so naturally we picked it up. With our final pick, we've secured ourselves one of the best setup sweepers in the entire game, and since our team doesn't really care about ice types, Dragonite can definitely succeed on this draft. But setup isn't all Dragonite is capable of. With a whopping 134 base attack stat, clapping a choice band on this guy is going to be really deadly, making it an excellent wall breaker for us, and with extreme speed, it provides us with a fantastic revenge killer. Let's not forget that it still has a very respectable special attack stat, and I can still drop Dracos if I want to. So that's my team for season 3 of the PPL. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you next Sunday for our week 1 battle, where we face Mephisto. Make sure to like the video and subscribe. See you soon!